Hello and welcome to this video. This is episode number 1 in an intro to energy systems. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this series is going to be all about systems and energy exchanges. If you didn't see my quick little intro video that I put out before this, I will put it in the description or in the comments so that you could jump back and check that out, because I do go over just a little bit of what I'm actually talking about when I say systems and energy exchanges. So if you're new to that and that's confusing to you, I would highly suggest watching that first. Here in episode number 1, I'm going to briefly talk about what is a system. And so systems in themselves are anything that has an interaction, a give and take of idea, energy, thought. It can take form like talking, speech. It can also take form as in making something, creating something. And it can take highly defined orchestration like industry, business, projects, actual manifestations of physical systems. But in general, it's important that we don't segment our view of systems into just that manifested presentation, the final sort of production of systems. If we look back first and always and remember that systems are actually energy exchanges, that systems are nothing more than data input and output of some sort, then, or energy input or output, right? If we pull it back into that kind of general sense, it makes a more conscious interaction possible. It makes more conscious systems. And that's my hopes here, right? With this entire series, and for myself in general, and hopefully humanity as well, is hoping to operate their systems with transparency, with honesty, and in a way that feels good, beneficial, helpful. That is the overall intention behind my service, behind my being, and behind all of my systems. And if we could understand that that sort of foundation you need to build where you're coming from with your intention of what kind of services and systems you're doing in your own self here before you go out and build anything, before you try to manifest those real systems in the world or go out and interact with any that are already there. To understand that all your communications and interactions within yourself should be assessed and viewed and managed, quote unquote, like a system. And with that same conscious consent, awareness, and responsibility that comes with being an enlightened human being, right? So that's why, that's the underlying purpose here of really why I'm talking about systems, why I have this series going, and why I feel it's important that we all start to understand the basics, the foundation. And so when we look at systems, in order to do that kind of internal assessment, in order to do that kind of contemplation, you have to have a knowledge base, all right? You have to understand the spectrum where your data is lying in order to be able to pick up the contrasts and the differences between them in order to see the shading and the intricate things that they're offering. So when we see and we talk about systems, the first thing that we should always understand and know and accept is that our current workings are all presented in working underneath this law or truth of duality, of polarities. You see it, we see it everywhere. It's not hard to accept or understand, and whether you choose to believe that that is a great function of infinite intelligence at work and intelligent design, or perhaps you just see it as a mechanism physiologically within the brain that adds this sort of filter of comparisons, and that we've evolved up into this for some reason, and that's just the way the human brain works, you know, to compare things and contrast them. It doesn't really matter what your belief up to that point is, you know. Both of them meet, both doors meet at the same hallway behind them, right? So let's not argue about which one you walked through. Let's just meet at the middle and understand that there is this sort of placeholder or setting or filter put upon our lives and our reality that separates things into polarities, opposites, contrasts, positive and negative. When we accept that and understand that, and we use that knowledge wisely to assess everything that we see and everything inside of us as well, that, you know, we see internally, you'll start to understand better workings, right? And so when we look at systems and we look at all energy interactions and we understand this filter of duality of positive and negative happening, obviously we have positive functioning systems and we have negative functioning systems. Now, I'm going to, in other videos, really break down what each one is and the methods behind them and how they work, and then how we can identify them. Because it's my understanding and it's my hope, you know, that when we understand functionality and we understand their laws, their quote-unquote truths of how these things run and what keeps their little reality bubbles working and functioning, then, and we accept it as it is, and we say, yes, that's how negative works, that's how it presents itself. If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? And we say that about the negative systems. If we know how they work and they function, and we call them negative for their function and their feeling and their frequency and their service, then we won't be as easily manipulated and fooled by the superficial presentation of physicality. Because a lot of people get tricked up in that, and we don't listen to the truth meter, and we let our eyes and physicality fool us. And that's a big thing about how the negative has gained and kept such momentum. And if we all start to pull out of that and pull back out of that, they're going to quickly lose momentum, which is really what's happening already in the world. So this is really another reason why I'm bringing forth these videos and offering them in quick segments for people who maybe are beginners or are new or just don't have a lot of free time or whatever the case might be, right? To just go over these kind of introductional topics. Introductionary? I don't think introductional. Whatever. Who cares about grammatical? But yes, so it is my hope that by understanding how they work, by calling systems for what they are, seeing them for what they are, then as conscious beings that we are, we can consciously consent and say what we want to be a part of, how we would like to offer service to systems or be used by systems, right? How we would like to be used by the system or use the system. There's a big difference between what happens there energetically, what happens to how systems function when you allow certain truths to get cemented in and built upon. And we'll get into that a lot more when we talk about the differences between the systems and stuff. And then even more when we talk about how systems present themselves in the real world. I've done some videos on this already, and I think I did a podcast as well. I'll go through my negative agenda series because I'm pretty sure I was talking about it with the negative agenda. But I'll put those in below in case you missed that, or in case you're new to my channel and you'd like to jump right into that kind of stuff. I have a topic talk that I did a while ago, a couple months back, maybe a year ago, about this. But it's heavy and it's long. And this is why I'm trying to do quicker segmented videos where I stick to a single topic, because they can be very long-winded. And these topics are so deep, and they encompass such a wide variety of information working that I can talk about it forever and get caught up, right? But if you are looking for more on that specifically, you can find it in the comments as well. And I think it's basically called like an in-depth look at how systems present themselves in the 3D world. Such a mouthful of a title, right? Whatever. But yes, systems in themselves, they do present themselves out in the real world, but it's so important, and what I want to start with the foundations and understanding is how systems are energy exchanges and communication within ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, what our internal dialogue and systems look like, what our systems of our reality have been built up, and why, and what they look like. Because if we create a reality, our thoughts are things, right? Most of us are catching on and understanding the solidity of that phrase. You know, before people be like, oh yeah, you create your reality, yeah, your thoughts create your world. But when you really think about it, it's so much deeper than it presents itself at the forefront of that message. And every time you think you've gotten to the base layer, after a while you're going to find a layer underneath that, and a deeper understanding. And wow, I do create my own reality. And then wow, I do, you know, and it gets more real and more real. And the deeper that you go, it's work that, and a feeling and a frequency of truth that you'll know when you do it, and you'll hear it, and it will ring true to you, in ways that no outside source will ever make you, or could ever make you, doubt about, because you feel it in your soul, you feel it in your guts or your heart, whatever the depths of your being, you know, whatever you want to call that. And same thing with the systems work. When we get into talking about internal systems, you'll feel your truths. You'll start to hear your internal conversations. You'll gain awareness of all the system processes that are taking place within you, you know, on all the different levels, mind, body, and spirit. Get into every single one of them, and then you find the depth there, and you open up the communication, and you sense the systems taking place. And then you can see what's really benefiting you, what's aligning with the real view that you have for yourself, and what's not. You know, what's aligning with the trueness of your systems that you want to produce, what you want to offer and be, and what doesn't. And going with those things and letting go of things that don't. And that's really what this whole kind of process is hopefully going to be encouraging people to do, hopefully going to be little breadcrumbs or seeds that later on, when you're away from the screens and the internet, when you're doing things in your own life, that it will have seeped in there and grown some roots, right? And you'll be motivated and encouraging your own self to do this beautiful practice of self-love, of alchemy. I call it energy alchemy, light and shadow work, self-discovery, self-help, introspection, whatever you want to call it, self-therapy or whatever, self-counseling. That's really what all of this is, and that's where we're going to start with. So my next episode most likely on this is going to be looking at ourselves as systems. How are you a system? What do your systems look like? So that we can really start to get into the truth of it first. Because sometimes I feel when we introduce and we start to immediately talk about positive and negative systems and tie them into positive and negative emotions, and then they get really looped into I'm a good person or I'm a bad person, and they're a good person, they're a bad person, it's a bad system, good system kind of judgments that we start stamping everything and seeking to confine and box them in as, good or bad, light or dark. And that in itself is it's a risk, it's a misnomer, it's misrepresentation, mispronunciation of the work in general. And I don't want to get us caught up in that. I really want to allow some space so that, we can break up sort of the ice on the top of that layer and dive deeper. But first and foremost here, we have to just talk about and understand what systems are, how we are systems, how everything is systems, being able to see the many different versions of how system templates play out. So that's what my first video here has been, hopefully an introduction to. I hope you'll take some time to really think about the many varieties and the layers of opportunities for systems to present themselves in your own life, your internal life, your direct life, that life which you interact with directly, and also the external world out there. Don't overwhelm yourself with external systems, and don't go out there and fill yourself up with a bunch of negativity, because just know, if you don't know, I'm sure you sense it, and there's truth to the negative overlay out there. It is a soup, an atmosphere of negativity, which breeds a fertile ground for this matrix overlay system that's in place. They want it negative. They need negative energy, a feeling of that, an overall undertone or shading, because it's what they're comfortable within. And they, have spent decades or centuries even building the structure out there in the solid world of the matrix, right? So don't get too in-depth about looking out at external things and trying to name and label positive or negative systems yet. But just be aware, and be more aware of internal systems and feelings, and allow yourself to, very simply, when you are assessing systems, say, does this feel free and open? Is this something that you can interact with freely when you want to, and that you could disengage when you don't want to, and you can come back when you would like to? Is your service offered freely, and does it feel good when you offer it? Or is this system something that you feel tied into, that you feel it depends on you, and that what you give into it, you don't get back? That you're expected to bring things to the table and give to the system or to the whole or to something else out there. And that's really the interaction that happens when you partake in that system. And also, is it a system that relies on your input? And so it wouldn't really function if you didn't show up. That's another thing to ask yourself, And that's a way to sense and feel, if it is free-flowing or if it is stagnant, if it is positive or if it is negative, if it is operating in the black or in the red, right? If it is, quote-unquote, non-profit, or if it is debt-based. Yeah, so this is my quick introduction. I have had it under 20 minutes. I'm really going to try all these videos under 20 minutes. So this has been episode number 1, a basic introduction on just what I mean by systems, getting a general sense of what they are and how they present themselves on the spectrum of duality. And so how we have to view them, and we should assess them as positive and negative. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Please feel free to leave comments, send me email. You can find me on Telegram, Amory Speaks, everywhere, Spotify, YouTube, and BitChute. You can always find me directly on my website, www.amoryspeaks.com. Not only do I have a bunch of stuff about myself over there and readings and things that I do, but I also have, excuse me, I also have a whole tools tab that's full of free references, resources, videos, on a bunch of different categories and subjects. So if you're interested in anything introspection, spirituality, happiness, anything that I talk about. Most of it's available over there as well, or in further detail over there. So feel free to check it out. Thanks so much for joining me and listening. My audience, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective as well. I hope you'll tune in to me for episode number 2, where I'm going to be talking a bit about our systems, your own systems, the systems within you. So if you're looking forward to that, you can find that pretty soon on my YouTube channel. Yeah, so thank you for joining me.